brief for Colonel Weaver, who was off doing something. And so my assistant here, Ashley, I asked her how old she was in 2007, I believe, or 8, when I gave that brief, and she told me 11. And so I informed her that she just made me feel old, but it's a good thing. So, and tonight I'd love to come and talk to you a little bit tonight, and we'll have a quick agenda here. Ashley, if you go to the next slide, please, let's see what we got. All right, so you've seen this probably every time that Scott St. Sauber or Colonel Weaver came before me. Our mission statement at Camp Ripley really continues to be the same. It's the three legs on the stool. It's our federal mission of providing the best soldiers I can to the federal government so that they can go and fight and defend our country. It's a state mission of being ready to train soldiers to help our state agency partners in domestic operations, to respond to things like the Super Bowl or flooding in the Red River Valley or flooding in Little Falls. And then finally, I really enjoy doing the third part of my mission, which is to get out and be a good community member, and that's what the heart of tonight is all about. So next slide, please. So some of you probably aware of my background a little bit. My name is Lowell Cruz. I grew up in South Dakota, and I owned a dairy farm in South Dakota for about 17 years. And I had the opportunity to come and work full-time for the Minnesota National Guard in 2006 in 2 different roles on Camp Ripley. I was originally the security manager for the state, managing all the security guards, and then for the last 5 years, I was the director of logistics for the Minnesota National Guard. But this fall, we've had a serious amount of change in leadership in the Minnesota National Guard. So I'll just kind of give you an overview of some of that. General Richard Nash retired this fall and was replaced by Major General John Jensen, who was his deputy and is just a great boss to work for. He was a former division commander as well, very level-headed, and more importantly, very intelligent. I would call him a genius level of intelligence. Spent his life as a planner, and so he can sniff out a bad plan if you throw it in front of him in a heartbeat. And so, good boss. I talked a little bit about myself. So what happened with me is the Minnesota National Guard has 2 one-star generals that work for John Jensen. They're brigadier generals. They're both assistant adjutant general positions. I fill one of those positions, and what the Guard's done differently is we've stationed that position, which was normally in St. Paul, at Camp Ripley. And so in that role, working as one of the assistants for Major General Jensen, I am the titled the senior commander at Camp Ripley. Okay, Colonel St. Sauber, who retired this summer, and many of you came to his retirement, so he says hi. He's back in Britain at the lake right now, enjoying summer fishing and things like that. Was replaced by a traditional guardsman, by Colonel Brian Melton. So rather than having a full-time colonel there, which is what Scott was, Brian is a traditional guardsman. He is the county attorney over in Moorhead for that county over there in Clay County, and so he comes as a normal drilling soldier and tries to keep my staff running. And already introduced the CSM Matt Erickson, who joined us last March. So he's already got a year under the belt of a 3-year tour, and he joins us as well from the Fargo-Moorhead area. So next slide, please. So just quick, the numbers you've seen multiple years, and if you look all the way back to 2012 through 16, we hover around that $300 million of economic impact in your community. That hasn't changed a lot. It really is tied to 2 different things. When it does fluctuate, it's how much construction we're doing on the base, or how much money we're able to get to continue to buy willing landowner easements as part of the ACUB program, or the Army Compatible Use Buffer program. This last year, we were very lucky of leveraging end of the year federal funding of about $9 million, and so that really helped that impact line there. But our military payroll, across the base remains around that $64 million, and I don't see any real significant growth in our full-time team at Ripley. We're fighting the DOD for more full-time force to help the National Guard now that we're essentially bearing the brunt of being an operational part of the Army. And that'll come, but like all things, it takes 5-6 years for the federal federal government's budgeting process to catch up to that emerging need. So we're probably still a couple years away from seeing any kind of growth in our full-time force. Next slide. So some of the accomplishments, we had about almost 400,000 man days of soldiers, DOD members at Camp Ripley this last year. But what's really important to highlight is almost 62,000 man days of civilian agency training there. So that's really been our growth market. General Nash tasked Colonel St. Saber with growing that aspect. And what was normally a kind of a April through October footprint of soldiers coming to Little Falls and to Camp Ripley is now a year-round footprint of police departments and DOT snowplow drivers and all sorts of different agencies coming and using what is our very economical training facilities there for them to rent from us. So I did participate. I was the commander in the exercise that we did in August for the combat support training exercise. It's a really cool exercise that the Army Reserve does, and what's really important about that is the exercise has about 5,000 soldiers at Fort McCoy in Wisconsin, and we had about 1,500 at Camp Ripley. And for those logistics units that were part of that, they really trained on the distance between the two installations. They had a convoy support center in the Twin Cities area, and they literally move convoys back and forth from Fort McCoy to Camp Ripley every day and track them and move supplies back and forth. So we've done a lot of wildland fire training. We're tracking, we've been briefing in a couple of years. The 60-acre solar field came online last April after the tornado tried to delay it. And then we've hosted all sorts of different events and dignitaries throughout the year. So pretty busy year in 2017, and 18 is just as busy for us. So next slide, please. So the tornado hit in the fall of 16. It wrecked about 7 buildings for us. Right now, the 4 major buildings that we are reconstructing are coming out of the ground at Ripley right now. So if you come, you'll see this construction occurring. What's really cool about it is we were able to leverage almost $30 million of leftover federal funding at the national level to replace these facilities. And so the tornado basically expanded the capability that we had in those buildings, because now we're building those buildings to a different standard than what they were in the 70s when they were originally built. And so they're much larger, and they're going to give us a lot more capability. And so, you know, if I can get a tornado to roll through about every 3 years and direct its path, I think it'd probably be a good thing. But we're very happy that nobody got injured in that, and by next summer these buildings will all be complete. So it just shows you how long it takes for us to contract and construct anything as well. So next slide. We are doing some additional new construction. You're very familiar with our row upon row of tin huts. And if you're interested in buying a tin hut, we just put the first batch of them on the state surplus website today. So I was told back in the 70s we populated the countryside with tin huts for last time, and so we're going to try that again. The reason why we're selling some is we had to move some because we built these buildings in a replacement for them. And so each one of these buildings is about a little over $1 million to build, and it gives us 5 open bays inside of that building and the same capacity as the tin huts that were in that spot. So we're calling them 3-season, but I'm really pushing the envelope to try to make them usable for us from probably March through November. And so they'll be able to take the winter off, but we're so busy right now that most weekends I can fill the place up and not have enough housing. So if we can extend that season, we hope that we can move some of that demand around as well. Next slide, please. Other things we did in the community for construction projects, many of you have been to Valhalla. We overhauled the exterior of Valhalla this last year. New shingles, sealed all the logs on the side. So just to try to maintain that building in the historic state it's at. We're really right now delving into the history of how it was created, and it really appears that, back in the 30s there was some interesting accounting processes that helped us buy Valhalla and get it there, done by the governor at that time. So we did demolish some of our World War II era buildings. There's only 4 World War II era buildings left on the installation. We took down 4 of the 2-story barracks, and we're right now that area is cleared and the buildings are gone, and we'll figure out what's going to go in there in the future. Next slide, please. So just a quick overview of the training schedule. May is the month we're in right now, and I like to highlight the elements that are going to make a lot of noise per month, or kind of make a lot of helicopter flying and stuff like that. But I would tell you that we have noisemakers May through August or September coming up here. May is a very busy month for us. We got about 12,000 military soldiers that are going to come join us over the month of May. This last weekend, I think most of them were at Camp Ripley because it was incredibly busy. But we will see some artillery firing starting later in the month here, as well as we'll continue to see a lot of airfield usage by both our helicopters and our C-130 flights. Just a highlight of major events, we had the Disabled American Veterans Turkey Hunt last week, and so we had 31 Disabled American Veterans from the VA come and hunt. They shot 14 turkeys, and so that was pretty good success for them. Normally they're not that successful. Bud Grant was up again with Bob Lassard, so they were kind of our 2 dignitaries that were hunting again. This was probably the first year that Bud asked the group if there were any World War II veterans present, and he was the only one there. And so that generation is about ready to be recognized as not joining us for a lot of events. So today we are doing the deployed turkey, or the deployed soldier turkey hunt on base. So we got about 30 soldiers that have deployed in the last 5 years or so that are out there actively trying to shoot a turkey right now. Next slide, please. So another laundry list of units in June. Not as busy as a lot of Junes I've seen, about 8,000 soldiers over the month of June. But June is going to be very busy for us, and you'll see some invites from us as well, because the Norwegians are coming for our summer Norwegian exchange in June. This will be the second summer we've done this. It'll occur the 14th through the 30th basically of June, and we'll once again kind of rebuild those bonds that we have with our Norwegian brethren as they bring 100 soldiers over here and we send 100 to Norway. So, but we do have units coming from Illinois as well, and Wisconsin and Iowa this month, as well as a plethora of Minnesota units. So, next slide. With the 4th of July being in midweek this week, or in July, and it kind of consuming the first 10 days of July, in reality, you see our training on our soldier side is about 6,000, so our lightest month this year. We do see some extra helicopters coming in July though, so there'll be some extra helicopter noise, as well as the 151 Field Artillery is going to have its annual training in July, so you'll have a lot of artillery occurring the last 2 weeks of the month of July. For major events for us, we're hosting our youth and our teen camps in July. These are camps that are designed for our military's children, and we probably have 200 to 300 teen and youth campers that come for a week at a time to Ripley and get a chance to learn what their parents do when they're in uniform. So it's kind of an exciting event for us. So next slide, please. August is probably our biggest month of the summer. Full month of August, almost 10,000 soldiers there. And once again, you'll see the 125 Field Artillery is there for its annual trainings. That's the sister battalion. So we have 2 151 battalions in the state, or 2 155 millimeter battalions, and they're probably our largest noise producers, as well as our armor battalions, but our FA battalions obviously make the most noise. So, the Minnesota State Patrol has got their camp going, as well as the DNR has their academy going this summer as well. So, next slide. Finally, way, we roll into September and October, and you can see the column on the right just grows exponentially for us. September and October are really the months that our civilian agencies are trying to leverage Camp Ripley to do a lot of their conferences. And so our military traffic's about 5,000. We're almost, half of that in the civilian column. So a lot of police departments and sheriff's departments and emergency management training occurring in September. And next slide, please. And almost equal number of civilians coming in October. But the largest portion of that civilian population in October is the DOT snowplow driver training that occurs for 2 1-week periods. They take up a lot of our room, as well as we count all the civilians that are participating in our deer hunt programs as well in October. So, next slide, please. I threw this slide on here because I wanted to deliberately engage you and ask for your help on our C-130s and what they do over Camp Ripley. There are 2 C-130 wings in the state. The 934th is a reserve wing, and the 133rd is an International Guard wing, both stationed in St. Paul, right at the Minneapolis airport. But both of them will spend normally Tuesday through Thursday, sometimes Monday through Friday, doing day and night flying at Camp Ripley. And so we get a lot of, well, not a lot, but we get complaints from the public of what the C-130s are doing, and they're flying too low, or all sorts of other bizarre complaints. And so this is my ask for you to help engage a little bit, because the public is used to seeing an airplane take off, fly, and land at a position. So to see airplanes swirling over Camp Ripley, our C-130s are coming to Camp Ripley because of 2 things. We have a beautiful runway, and we have what we call an assault strip, which is a gravel runway. And so we have C-130s that come from Texas, Arizona, California to use that gravel runway because it's one of the few in the nation, and they train on it to land in Afghanistan. And so you'll constantly see the swirl of 4-engine airplanes swirling around Camp Ripley, and they'll be doing touch and grows on those runways, as well as they continue to drop pallets of mock supplies in our drop zone that are GPS guided. So they have the ability of controlling through GPS the parachute that's bringing that pallet down so it can land on a spot in the ground, which is incredibly important for us in Afghanistan, again, as we resupply troops that are isolated. So that's kind of an overview of what they do with flight training, both day and night. At night, they're flying without any lights on, and they're flying with MVGs, and then we have a lot of their dismount folks that come to Camp Ripley as trained as well, both their medical and their security teams. So, next slide, please. Talked a little bit about we've got four main partners on Camp Ripley on the state agency side that are full-time tenants. The DNR right now is doing their academy. We've got about 15 to 18 potential conservation officers training in their academy right now. The State Patrol graduated their academy last week out of Ripley, so those kids have been at Ripley for almost 5 months. And then the HSCM and MnDOT have a permanent presence at Camp Ripley as well. And so not only are they renting space from us, but they're part of our emergency management plan and provide us the response that we need with the Morrison County Sheriff for any kind of active shooter events and things like that as well that could occur in our installation. Next slide. Our environmental program, it seems like every year I can brag about the fact that we won another award. This year we've been recognized that we won the Department of Defense Cultural Resources Protection Award. Now it says Army in there, but when we built this slide we'd won the Army level, but now we've won the DoD level. And so we're being recognized for our efforts to preserve the Indian mound sites that are along the Mississippi, which are burial sites from Indian tribes from long ago, as well as some of the preservation of old Fort Ripley, and then all the work that we're doing to culturally clear our land and work with the tribes to make sure that we don't have any kind of culturally significant land or articles in that land that we're going to disturb. And so this year it was a Cultural Resources Award. Before it was a Natural Resource Conservation Award. But they've got a lot of responsibilities, and we tie to that, our efforts at green energy as well, the solar field. And what I think is more effective is all the geothermal that we take advantage of. All the new buildings that we're reconstructing from the tornado damage are all going to be heated and cooled by geothermal energy. So Camp Ripley's done a ton of that kind of work, and it's kind of exciting. Next slide, please. With all these environmental programs, I've got a lot of environmental oversight as well, what I call drivers of regulation. So we've got to be compliant with federal and state statutes, both the EPA and the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency and the DNR. I've got presidential and governmental orders. I've got stacks of Army regulations, just a lot of checks and balances in our environmental program, and a lot of agencies that come and inspect us at a whole. And I would tell you that we don't win all those awards on the last slide without meeting all the expectations of those agencies. So I'm very proud of how the job we do as environmental stewards at Ripley. Next slide, please. And then finally, we couldn't do the environmental work we do without all the agency partners that support us. The soil, the Minnesota Board, Water and Soil Resources, the colleges, your local schools, interest groups, Earth Day, all those opportunities to do something for our environment is part of what documents and gets us this chance to compete for that high level of awards as well. Next slide. So some of the things that we're doing for community outreach, we host our annual open house again in September. So please, if you're available that weekend in September, come join us and see what's changed at Camp Ripley. We do a lot of festivals in Morrison County. I provide a lot of senior leaders for Memorial Day and Labor and Veterans Day speeches, because we're proud to do that as our, carrying our part of the water for those generations that come before us, as well as our outdoor sports programs with the VA is pretty important for us. Next slide. We're almost done burning. This year was a strange year for us. We were going to burn 15,000 acres, and we're almost there. I'd say about half of it burned non-deliberately, because our soldiers continue to train. So the majority of our impact areas burned through training burns, but they were all well contained. And I would tell you that having my full-time fire department at Camp Ripley has not only professionalized our footprint at Camp Ripley, but as part of your community, my fire department is an active member in every one of those local fire departments. There's somebody that's working full-time at Camp Ripley. So to have the opportunity to have a full-time firefighter just leads to a different level of professionalization for those kids and a lot more training. And so we're almost done burning. The conditions the last couple of weeks have been really good for burning, so we've had to be very careful. So next slide. And then finally, I talked about it a little bit earlier, this last year we leveraged $9 million of federal funds to buy ACUB easements. We also were able to get money out of from the Lessard Heritage Council, which allowed us to get almost another $1.2 million there. And so we were able to enroll another 2,500 acres into easements, but I've got 211 interested landowners out there that are waiting for me to find more money this year to help them. And what's different about our ACUB map, you've seen it before, but this year we modeled it due to noise contours. So before it was a 3-mile buffer around Camp Ripley, and that's kind of what you see there right now. But the zone available for ACUB is going to change a little bit, and we're modeling it after our noise contours so that we can help get easements on land that's most affected by our noise, because that's probably our biggest challenge. So next slide. And then just kind of an overview of another construction piece that I thought was significant just to share with you. It kind of cropped out of the ground without us. Our FMR construction folks knew it was coming, but the management on base was surprised a little bit the day they told us, hey, let's go site this. But we dug this very large basin on the north end of Camp Ripley. It's close to the old cemetery that's on the north end of Ripley. And what it does is we've got a lot of acres of parking lots that have storm sewers in them, and all that water was running into the Mississippi, and all the gravel and all that came off those parking lots. And so this infiltration basin is designed to take all that runoff and contain it and allow it to soak back into the aquifer, and then hopefully as well we'll come every couple of years and harvest all the dirt and gravel back out of it to maintain it and allow us then not to dump all that back in the Mississippi. So another example of something that we'll probably tout as an environmental process that's doing us a lot of good. So next slide, please. And lady, gentlemen, that's the end of my quick overview. I'll take any questions that you have for me. So.
I could say some good things about the working relationship with you guys. Camp Ripley Veterans State Trail, it's been really nice. They're really open, and I'm not really going to say much about that, but it's been a good working relationship, and I've taken students in there for environmental studies and never had a problem. You guys have always helped out. The kids enjoyed it. They learned a lot, and it's a really good spot for that. So you benefit the community in other ways that people just don't see every day, and it's really it gives us a lot of beneficial education and availability to go out there and see things we normally wouldn't. So it's I like the way you handle that.
Sir, you know, and I've talked to you offline, you know, part of that is the leadership change of our Adjutant General. General Jensen is much more understanding of our role in the community, and sometimes that role has a little risk, be it maybe giving up a little ground on the side for the Veterans Trail or whatever it is. But he understands risk and understands when it's appropriate to make a decision and assume some risk. So, you know, he's a good guy to work for. So.
Do you have the date for the teen camp when it is?
The first one is I got to get my son enrolled. It is the last week of July is the first one here. So, and that enrollment's open. So if you have somebody that you want to steer at that, please have them go on the website. So
I was out there last year with the grandson, and he's ready to go again. So.
Oh, good.
It's really fun.
Maybe you can camp with Connor.
General, I'd like to thank you for the infusion into the local economy. You know, looking at those numbers, and while I was employed at Coburn's, just to see there were soldiers in there almost daily, especially from the May through October, but pretty much year-round, and also the Citizens Advisory Committee and actually taking input from citizens around the area, and the great working relationship that Little Falls has with Camp Ripley. I think we're very fortunate. We've had great leaders out there, and I see they're continuing with the great leaders out there. So thanks for everything you do, and looking forward to working more with Camp Ripley.
Well, Mayor, I appreciate your comments, because we understand that we can be the kind of neighbor that causes problems, or we can kind of be the neighbor that gets ahead of the problems, and at the heart of that, that's relationships. So that's why I'm here tonight. And so I'm very proud to have a chance to talk about a place that I love. So it's very easy to talk about Camp Ripley.
Well, I get to hear the C-130s and the helicopters in my neighborhood, and I like when somebody said something to, I believe it was Russ Nygren, about the noise. He said, "Sounds like freedom to me." So that's what it sounds like to me.
All right.
Thank you for coming to share with us.
All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.